Good morning everyone. In today's video we will see about five kingdom classification. Five kingdom classification was proposed by Sir Robert Whittaker in the year 1969. So all living creatures were classified into five kingdoms, namely Monera, Protista, Fungi, Animalia and Plantae. So these five kingdoms were categorized based on these criteria: nutrition, cell organization, cell type, respiration, reproduction and movement. So Sir Robert Whittaker proved that fungi are different from plants in the year 1959. Later in the year 1969, he proposed five kingdom classification where he gave a separate kingdom for fungi. Now we'll see about the criteria for classification. So the first criteria is nutrition. Based on the nutritional pattern, organisms can be classified into three types. One is autotrophs. Auto means self. So these are organisms which have the capacity to produce its own food. Heterotroph are organisms which depend on other living organisms for their food. Saprotroph are organisms which feed on dead organic matter. Moving on to cell organization, here we will see whether the organism is made up of a single cell or many cell. Uni means one. If the organism is made up of single cell, they comes under unicellular. If the organism is made up of more than one cell, we call it as multicellular. Multi refers to many. And the third criteria is cell type. Cell type is nothing but if the organism has a well developed nucleus and membrane bound organelles, we call it as eukaryote. U refers to true, karyote means nucleus. If the organism has well developed nucleus and other cell organelles are present, means it is called a eukaryote. Prokaryotes refers to organism which do not have a nucleus. They have a region called nucleoid where the genetic material is present, and they also lack membrane bound organelles inside their body. And the fourth criteria for classification is respiration. Based on respiration, we can classify organisms into two types. Aerobic refers to the organism which require oxygen for their growth. Anaerobic means an organism which do not require oxygen for their growth. And the fifth criteria is reproduction. Reproduction is the ability of an organism to produce its offspring. So based on reproduction, we can classify organism into three types. Asexual means an organism which single plant parent cell is required to produce an offspring. Sexual reproduction is nothing but the involvement of two organisms is required to produce an offspring. Spores are a special parts which has the ability to withstand unfavorable condition, and they can also be dispersed to a longer distances. So some organisms also reproduce through spores. And the sixth type is movement. Movement is nothing but whether the organism is motile or non-motile. Static means these organisms do not have the capacity to move from one place to another. Self-moving means an organism which has the capacity to move on its own. So the first kingdom is Monera. Monera includes all prokaryotic microorganisms. So the first one is bacteria. Then we will see about archaea. Bacteria are made up of only one cell, and hence they are called single-celled organisms. They are prokaryotic in nature. Pro refers to before, karyote means nucleus. They do not have a well-developed nucleus. Instead, they have a region called nucleoid, and they also lack cell organelles inside their body like endoplasmic reticulum, lysosome, Golgi apparatus, etc. And bacteria have several beneficial roles to play in the environment. For example, they help in the cycling of elements in the biosphere. They play a major role in nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle, carbon cycle, and they also produce vitamins inside our body. So they help in the production of vitamin B12 inside other living organisms, where they act as a symbionts. And the third point is that they help in breaking down dead plants and animals. So they act as an saprophyte where they help in cleaning the environment. And the fourth point is that they also help in the production of oxygen. So some bacteria will perform photosynthesis. As a result, they give out oxygen. One such example is cyanobacteria. And moving on to the cell wall of bacteria, they have peptidoglycan layer in their cell wall. Both gram positive and gram negative bacteria will have peptidoglycan, but the quantity and the content of peptidoglycan present in gram positive bacteria is more comparing a gram negative bacteria. And the habitat of bacteria are soil, water, air. They are also present in our skin, on our skin, mouth and intestines. So some bacteria will cause diseases, not all bacteria, some bacteria. And moving on to archaebacteria. Archaebacteria are also single-celled prokaryotic organism, but there are some unusual characteristics in archaebacteria which made us to separate archaea from a bacteria. Nowadays we have given a different domain to archaea, but this classification was made in the year 1969, where archaea was considered as Monera. So Monera includes all prokaryotic organisms where we have archaea and bacteria, but now we have placed archaea in a different domain. So archaea has a unique ribosomal RNA sequences which was discovered after 1969, and it has a unique membrane lipid. For example, it has archaeol, that is diether lipid, in its cell membrane, which marks them unique from all living creatures. And they also have an unusual metabolism, and like some of them are methanogens, some of them are chemolithotropes, some utilize sunlight, whereas others fix carbon. So they do not have an organism which performs both fixing carbon and utilizing sunlight. Both the things are not taking place in one organism, but there are two different types of organisms that perform the process of photosynthesis in a different way. And they prefer to live in extreme environments. This was thought initially, but now we found that archaea live in a wide range of environments. Archaeal cell wall do not have peptidoglycan layer, and we do not have any pathogenic archaea. We have not discovered any pathogenic archaea so far. The third kingdom is Protists. Protists are larger than prokaryotes, but they are smaller than a eukaryotic organism, which means they are a primitive form of eukaryotic organism. This protist includes all the eukaryotic organism that doesn't comes under the category of an animal, plant and fungi. So it includes algae, protozoa, slime molds and water molds. First we will see about algae, and this algae is a photosynthetic protist, which means it performs photosynthesis, and they forms the basis for aquatic food chain. So they are producers, and together algae and cyanobacteria produce more than 75% of atmospheric, that is they produce more than 75% of the entire oxygen that is available in our planet. And moving on to protozoa, protozoa resemble an animal. So they have characteristics that resemble an animal, like they are motile and they hunt other prokaryotic organisms, and they are grazers. Some of them will feed on grasses, and they obtain their nutrients by ingesting. So ingestion is an characteristic of an animal. So they obtain nutrients by ingesting either organic material or other microorganisms, and they are found in different environments. They are also found in the intestinal tract of animals. So it helps the animals by digesting cellulose. So it is a complex material, so they help in the digestion of cellulose. They also cause diseases in humans and animals. So the third category of protist is slime molds. Slime molds will resemble protozoa in one stage of their life cycle, whereas on the other stage they resemble fungi. They consume the decaying vegetation and other microorganisms, and they hunt and engulf the food particles. And the next, that is the last category of protist, is water moles. From the name itself, it indicates that they prefer to live in fresh water and moist soil environment, and they also feed on decaying vegetation, but they prefer mulch and logs, and they cause infection in plants. For example, the great potato famine disease was caused by water moles, and it is very difficult to categorize protist because they have a wide range of eukaryotic organism, but they do not have anything in common. So it is very difficult for us to categorize protist. And the third kingdom is fungi. Fungi are eukaryotic organisms, which means they have a well-developed nucleus and they also have membrane-bound organelles inside their body. Fungi are a diverse group of organisms which includes both unicellular forms and multicellular forms. Example for unicellular forms is yeast. Yeast is a unicellular fungi, which means it is made up of single cell. An example for multicellular form is molds and mushroom. Molds and mushrooms are fungi that are made up of more than one cell. These molds have a thread-like structure called hyphae. And moving on to the cell wall of fungi, it is made up of chitin. Chitin is a unique feature that is present only in the cell wall of fungi. And most of the fungi are aerobic heterotrophs. Heterotrophs are organisms that feed on other living creatures, and there are also saprophytic fungi. These are organisms that feed on dead organic materials. And moving on to the most important point, fungi will absorb nutrients from their environment. They do not ingest food, they just absorb the nutrients from their environment, and they often use organic molecule as a source of energy. And moving on to the reproduction of fungi, they reproduce by budding. So budding is evident in unicellular forms, and the spore formation is evident in multicellular forms. And the beneficial roles of fungi are they help in the production of certain foods like bread, batter, and they also play a major role in the production of antibiotics. Antibiotics are agents that work against a pathogenic organism, especially bacteria, and they also help in decomposing dead organic matter in the environment. So these organisms which performs this function are called saprophyte. And fungi will cause diseases in plants, animals as well as humans. And the fourth kingdom is Plantae. Plantae includes all the trees, plants, herbs, shrubs, climbers and creepers. These are multicellular organisms and they are eukaryotic in nature, which means they have a well-developed nucleus, and they are autotrophs in nature. Autotrophs are the organism which makes its own food. They do not depend on other living creatures for their food, and they have cellulose and chlorophyll in their cell, which marks them unique from other kingdoms. And using this chlorophyll, they perform photosynthesis. It is a process by which they utilize sunlight, and in turn they fix carbon and they release oxygen, and they reproduce by both asexual method and sexual method. And the fifth kingdom is Animalia. Animalia includes all the animals, and they are multicellular eukaryotic organisms. They need oxygen for their growth, and hence they are called aerobic, and they have the capacity to move from one place to another, that is they are highly motile. And these organisms are heterotrophic in nature, which means they depend on plants or other animals for their food, and they perform sexual reproduction. And this Animalia kingdom can be classified into two groups, vertebrates and invertebrates. Vertebrates are the organism which have backbone, and invertebrates are the organisms which do not have backbone. And this Animalia includes wide range of organisms, especially all the mammals, fish, birds, reptiles, amphibians, insects, molluscs and annelids comes under Animalia. Now we will see about the merits and demerits of five kingdom classification. First we will see about merits. So the unicellular and multicellular organism are divided and they are kept in separate kingdom. So that is the first merit. And moving on to the second merit, as we have already discussed, all the prokaryotes and eukaryotes are separated and prokaryotes are given a different kingdom called Monera. And the third point is that fungi are separated from the Plantae kingdom and they are given a unique kingdom. So it is an added advantage. So this classification is based on the nutritional pattern of the fungi. It is again an added advantage. And the fourth point is that Sir Robert Whittaker had identified all the autotrophs and heterotrophs and he had placed them in different groups. And fungi are saprophytic in nature, and that's why we have separated fungi from plants and we have given them a separate kingdom. And the fifth point is about he has also given importance for the biocomposition and modes of nutrition of animal. So all these points reveal the fact that five kingdom classification is more natural than the two kingdom, three kingdom and four kingdom classification. And moving on to the demerits of five kingdom classification, yes, of course, till today five kingdom classification is accepted. This is because we have made certain changes in the five kingdom classification and we are accepting it. Though it is accepted till today, we also have some demerits of the five kingdom classification which was proposed in the year 1969. So the first demerit is that the similar organisms are separated from each other. For example, unicellular algae are kept in the kingdom Protista, whereas multicellular algae are kept in the kingdom Plantae. So an algae is an algae, whether it is an unicellular or multicellular algae. So algae are separated from each other and they are kept in different kingdom. It is a very big disadvantage because algae must be kept together. And the second disadvantage is that while studying about Protista itself, I would have said you that Protista includes a wide range of microorganisms which are different from each other, and hence it is very difficult to categorize them based on the small amount of similarities which they have. Again, that point is included here. This Protista kingdom is very diverse. So we know that diverse groups of organisms cannot be placed under one kingdom. And the third point is that viruses are not included in this classification system. I still have confusion in this point because viruses are not completely a living organism. Viruses lie between living and non-living thing. But anyway, they have given viruses are not included in this kingdom of classification, and it is also a disadvantage. Notes reveal this point, but I still have confusion in this point. And the fourth point is that they are polyphyletic. So most of the kingdoms in this classification are polyphyletic in nature except Monera. So polyphyletic refers to the organism that do not have a common ancestor. For example, we must keep the organisms that have one common ancestor in one group. But this kingdom of classification does not reveal this fact. What they are telling is most of the organisms that are kept in one group have more than one common ancestor. This is the point they are revealing. So this is not suitable to place the organism in one taxon. If a group of organisms are kept in one taxon, means it should have one common ancestor. So these are the merits and demerits of five kingdom classification.